What is the deepest, darkest secret you know about someone close to you? I found this out about one of my most trusted friends during an intoxicated round of whose childhood was crazier. His older sister had been mistreated by a neighbor repeatedly over a summer before he had found out. He said he only remembers feeling focused, like he had a job to do. Broke into this man's basement and hid until he went to sleep, went into his bedroom, and ended him. He then went and told everything to his, at the time, dealer uncle, who then went back to the apartment, harmed the guy again with the same weapon, and then called the cops and waited. His uncle served 10 years. My friend served 3 combat tours and is starting medical school next fall. Uncle, but at the same time, I feel really bad for him. Story 2. I work for a large company that consists of several retail locations and a handful of distribution centers. It is fairly well known in California. Everyone at the corporate headquarters regularly does hard substances. And by regularly, I mean at the office. I've gone to meetings to review product reports and been offered to play with a few lines. But it's super freaking easy work, which helps while I go to college and I get paid a lot. Story 3. After being the great listener and hearing everyone's dark secrets, I make it a point to be as little involved in that aspect of friends' lives as I can be. It weighs too heavily, especially when there's nothing they'll do about it. One particularly horrifying one was a friend who lives across the country, not giving her 6-month-old baby the vital medicine she needed to keep the huge hole in her heart from getting any bigger. That nearly ended me inside. Story 4. My ex had intimacy with her brother. It started in 8th grade. Me and this girl had become really good friends, and I had started to fall for her hard. Now, before this, I had never thought of myself as anything but straight, but there was just something about her that I loved. We eventually got together and dated for a while. We fooled around a lot, but due to our parents and distance issues, she had moved away. We ended up breaking up. We were still friends, though. Then she began talking to her biological dad who had left her as a child, and she found out had an older brother who lived a few states away. We both, of course, began talking to him. Soon she got me and him dating, and that lasted about 2 months. After that, me and her fooled around every now and then, nothing serious ever coming from it. Fast forward to about a year ago. Me and her were becoming very distant, both seniors in different high schools, no time to actually hang out. Eventually, I started dating her brother again, mostly just because I wanted to keep her in my life. This didn't stop me and her from messing around. Yeah, it was weird, but her brother knew about it and was okay with it. One day during one of our makeout sessions, things got heated and she ended up telling me how when she had gone to visit her brother over the summer a few years back, they had intimacy on a few occasions and were very intimate with each other. It was an instant mood ender. This and many other reasons were the cause of why we are no longer friends. So that's my messed up story of how my ex told me she was sleeping with her brother. Sweet home Alabama. Jesus. Story 5. Around 4 years older neighbor of mine, who I looked up to as a kid, showed up at my door one night, intoxicated, looking for a cigarette. My boyfriend and I were drinking a bit, so we smoked and invited her in. I left for a bit and came back to find her passed out on the couch. I woke her up to leave, and she kept crying and trying to hold my hand. She told me her dad mistreated her, and she couldn't go home because she was scared he'd do it again. She was gone before I woke up the next day, and we haven't spoken since. I don't know if she knows that I know, but I feel bad for the girl. I would assume she hasn't confronted things yet. Call the cops. Story 6. I had a teenage cousin that used to play doctor with my other cousins, all adolescents, both male and female. It was a freaking freak that was obsessed with intimacy. However, none of the parents knew or even wanted to acknowledge it if it was brought up to them. He's grown now and seems to have normalized. He settled down with a woman and bought a house. He seems to be more stimulated by gardening and shopping now. He even asked him about his history of mistreating his family, and he almost cried as he admitted he was a confused teen. He says all he wants is to be with his wife now. Story 7. When I was about 4 or 5, my sister, who was 5 years older than me, used to make me play a game called Scratch and Sniff. The game was basically me scratching herself through her PJs and smelling it, and she would laugh. It wasn't until I got older that I knew what it meant. I have an older brother, too, who's 8 years older than me. My relationship with him is pretty strong. He's always been good to me. My sister used to mistreat him. I don't know the details, but she was or is still extremely messed up. This literally broke my family. Years passed on. My mother continued to love her and forgive her. Too much. She was homeless for a while, after smashing everything in her house for no reason, until she got pregnant and came running back. She had a beautiful baby girl she continued to neglect. She would leave the baby in bed for so long that she'd start playing with her own mess and smearing it everywhere whilst she was taking substances. She never bathed her, and her house was a mess. My family tried so hard to intervene, but could only do so much. Social services took her in July, and we've been fighting so hard for our little girl. And my mother and I finally got some good news last week, and we'll be taking care of her from January. but I will never forgive her. Story 8. A recently good friend of mine told me the story of his life. When he was 2 to 3 years old, his father used to put substances in his gums when he was teething, only to get him used to it completely by the time he was 5. His step-uncle mistreated him when he was around 6 or 7. Also, he used to mistreat his stepbrother, and he walked in on the uncle. His stepfather used to harm him, and he found out at the age of 9 that his father was a kitty fiddler. He lived his life out being a user until he was around 32. He got intoxicated, as he usually did one night, and mistreated his best friend's daughter. He got caught. He's now out on probation. I'm the only person he's ever told outside of family, and still most of them disowned him, that didn't judge him and hate him. I know what he did was horrible and wrong, but I feel for him from his past and still have a place in my heart for him. I am conflicted as well. Story 9. One of my best friend's dads is in prison for termination. Growing up, her dad was never around, but she would talk about going up to visit him about 5 hours north of our hometown, but I began to realize she had never stayed all night with him or anything like that. I'd never seen any pictures of them together except when she was a baby. One day I asked my mom about him, and she told me he was in prison for termination. The stepmother and I Googled his name and found out his story. Apparently, he and 4 other guys had been robbing multiple banks in our area, and the police bugged the hotel room they were in and ended up hearing their plans to end some people they were on good terms with. They also found out he fired at a girl behind a local bar a few blocks from my house. Maybe this story is crazy to me because I'm from such a small town. Anyway, my mom asked her mom about him to see what she'd say, and she spilled the whole story and explained that it was her daughter's biggest secret that she had literally never told anyone. And also, she recently posted a picture of a Christmas card he made her, with the caption, "My dad's homemade Christmas cards are the best." I felt awkward knowing that her father made that while in prison. Merry Christmas. Story 10. Found a 60 to 70 picture collection on my dad's computer. I laughed, thinking that it was funny. At the age of 24, I finally found my old man's bank stash. Lol. And I saw the face of the one girl that all the pictures were of. It was my stepsister. All of them were taken from ages of about 19 to 23. They were not self-shots, unless she had a third arm that holds her camera. She told me once when she was very intoxicated that he had brought her toys when she was in high school. Strangely, the next day I checked to see when some of the pictures were last modified and they were all gone. I'm seeing him for the first time since that day. He doesn't know I know, and I've only told my mom, his ex-wife. I know that he housed my stepsister for years after her mom. His other ex rejected her. He has always been financially generous, but as with most parents, he wants to see that if he's going to pay for some of your school, that you will get decent grades, etc. However, he bestowed large amounts of money on her and required her to do nothing. Wow, smells like a lot of jail time. Story 11. While in 7th grade, a girl I had never talked to, one of the popular ones, came up to me. Me being socially awkward and found every conversation with a girl an intimate advance, I listened, and told me that she had tried to end it all a number of times with her mom's pills, but she had made it somehow, and then she told me she had fooled with over 20 adult men and one woman for cash and stuff, even though she had a boyfriend. She then told me that she thought about ending it all every day and how much she hated everyone she knew, including her boyfriend. When I asked her, "Why are you telling me all this?" she simply replied with, "Because I don't know you. And I know you're a nice guy, so you won't tell anyone, and even if you did, no one would believe you if you did because everyone would question why I told you all this. Because all they know is that I am a healthy, popular, straight-A student, and you're just a loser who will never get anywhere in life." We never spoke again, and she's currently 19 and in a relationship with a guy who's closer to 30 than 25. She's happy now, I hope. She read you to filth and you wish she's happy? Crazy. Story 12. Last Christmas, during my boyfriend's family holiday party, this is a family that likes to get down. Loud music, lots of expensive liquor, and good times until about 4 in the morning. Last year, I partook in the festivities and got good and intoxicated. I fell asleep on the couch, clothes and all. There were multiple people sleeping on the floor in the living room. I woke up around 9 to someone rubbing my lower belly. I was disoriented, so I assumed it was my boyfriend. At this point, I was awake and I realized that it was my boyfriend's brother's friend. I pushed his arm away and he just rolled over like nothing happened, sleeping on the floor. I never told anyone. I'm so thankful that I was wearing tights. I've been reminded that it doesn't matter who you are or where you are. You have to sleep with one eye open. This year, I will not be going to the holiday party and I wish I had said something when it happened. It makes me nervous knowing he might be there, and other unsuspecting women might fall victim to his creepy slumber prowling. Also, I was always one of those girls who would say that if a man ever tried anything funny with me, I'd kick his bum. I didn't. Story 13. In high school, there was this girl who I slept with. Christine, we'll call her. Well, once after we had intimacy, I laid next to her and we got to talking. He told me that when she was a kid, 6 to 12, her cousin used to mistreat her. I knew her cousin, we were acquaintances. I got so angry, but didn't let her know. I just listened. I took her home. Later, I decided I would hang out with him at my sketchy friend's house. Me and my friend beat him. I told him to never talk to Christine again or I would end him. He had his mouth wired shut for months. He moved away finally. You know what? Hell yeah. Story 14. My best friend's dad when I was growing up was into messed up stuff. So when I was growing up, about 16 or so at the time, I had been friends with this guy for about 4 to 5 years at this point. And he was absolutely one of my best friends. Him and my other friend and I were kind of a terrible trio, always doing stupid crap together. Well, anyway, I'm pretty good with computers, and people know that. So I was always getting asked to come over and fix someone's machine, etc. So my friend's dad, who was this awesome, super nice guy, happens to be an entire family of very devout, awesome Christians, asked me to come over and fix his computer because it's acting funny. I didn't think anything of it. I went over and started working in his computer, which was tucked into a corner in the back of this room. So I'm left alone because, to be honest, at the time I knew way less about troubleshooting than I do now. It took me a lot longer to fix computers than it does now, so I'm back there for probably about an hour or so, messing with this slow computer, and I noticed that the NVIDIA folder is like 2.8 gigabytes. This was back in the year 2000. 2.8 gigabytes in one folder was a gigantic red flag, especially for some silly little e-machine. I took a look, and yeah, found lots of corn, tons of it. A lot of it looked like the guy's daughter. Not as in it was his daughter, but like it was looking at little girls that resembled his daughter. I was grossed out and deleted the whole folder. I considered the machine fixed at that point, and went outside to hang out with my friend. His dad came up later and sat down with us on the porch table outside and asked about the computer. I told him his NVIDIA folder had become corrupted and I had to delete it. I told him that if that NVIDIA problem ever came up again, I might need to look into the proper way of getting rid of it. It's kind of hard to accurately describe the look of terror that hit this man's face, but I got my point across and he understood that I knew. I've never told my friends this. The only person that knows is my ex-wife and another friend of mine. I've always wanted to tell him, but the time has passed now. I have no evidence since I deleted it, and I just could not, at 16 years old, be responsible for destroying my friend's family. I've always just kind of hoped that he took my warning and never did it again. Story 15. My cousin was mistreated repeatedly by her father over many years ago. She went to the police and there was a court case, but her mother said it was just her trying to get attention. She fell pregnant and the baby was terminated in the 7th month due to being malformed. Brain outside of the head, 2 hearts, and much worse. He's never been charged or found guilty in any way, but my cousin, who is now in her 40s, is going through hell as she's remembering more and more all the time. She's had a few breakdowns and is a mess. I wish I could do something to make him pay, but without my cousin's support and without his wife, my aunt, coming forward and saying something, nothing will be done and she'll never do that. I did spread the news throughout the whole family. Well, I told a few people and the word spread, so everyone avoids him and my aunt now. Maybe that is to be his punishment, living a lonely old life with nobody caring or giving a crap about him. It's what he deserves. Well, he deserves even more, but, you know. Story 16. His parents had passed away at birth, so he had been raised by his aunt and uncle, but they got in trouble with the law. He got out of the area before they arrested him as well, but the cops are still officially hunting him to this day. He then fell in love with his sister for a short period of time, but then they broke up soon after. I do know that later on in life, him and his sister discussed what happened and came to terms with it. I don't know the specifics though, since all I did was eavesdrop a little, but I did hear that his father was Darth Vader and he had to go confront him on the Death Star. Wow. You really had me on that one, buddy. Story 17. My best friend from elementary school was mistreated by her older brother's best friend. He made her go into her closet and give him a whistle. I'm the only person she ever told. Another best friend from elementary school was mistreated along with her sister. They were at the golf course with their dad and his friend. The friend took them one at a time on a golf car ride, where he proceeded to give them Skittles and then mistreated them. She said later she asked her mom what being a V-card meant, and when she told her, said, "I don't think I'm pure." In high school, she ran away from home and was hitchhiking and was picked up by a random man, and he also mistreated her. Out of my 6 best friends from elementary school, I'm the only one whose parents are still together. Every time their father cheated on their mother, 2 of them were their babysitters. Some of these friends don't know some of the details that I do. One of my former friends from high school is addicted to corn. He makes money from doing web shows. I don't know if he does anymore. He also sent my friend and I pictures of his things at least weekly for over a year. My best friend from high school and her now ex-boyfriend robbed 3 girls from our school to buy more pills. She also used to be a klepto. Dog, where do you live? Story 18. Last year, I found out my best friend, who had been my friend for about 6 years, lived in Israel for 2 years when he was 16 and 17. During that time, he started a small cult to punish criminals who were never convicted. Eventually, it grew to, I think, 8 countries. For a few years, they would take people who repeatedly committed other disgusting crimes. They would harm them, on camera. When he first told me this, I was very skeptical, but he showed me videos. He stopped having anything to do with this cult 4 years ago. Story 19. My friend began fooling around with a dude in his 60s when we were in high school. She was 14 and lived in New York. Her dad is a fundamentalist Christian and heavily into his right to bear arms. She's such a good liar, she convinced her parents over the years nothing was going on. When she graduated, she moved across state lines to live with him in PA and told her parents it was because tuition would be less expensive, which wasn't true. Her dad told her to take her cat with her or else he would fire at it. She didn't. Her dad fired at the cat. When her parents began suspecting her once again after so many years, she married a guy her age and moved a few states south. Every time she came to visit her parents, she fooled around with the old guy. She kept this up until about a year ago. She's 22 now. Story 20. My father-in-law always talks about his time serving in Vietnam as an Army Special Forces ranger, sniper, or paratrooper. Was fired at multiple times, but I know he's full of crap. I'm a veteran and I happened to see his DD-214. He was a truck driver, served 4 months in Vietnam, then drove over a mine. He was medically discharged and received full disability from the Army, but it wasn't from being shot. I'd be interested in your opinions, but I decided that since he really did serve, earned a Purple Heart, and doesn't lie about the Medal of Honor, I never called him out. Other than that, he's a good guy and a great father-in-law. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 21. My now gone uncle terminated 2 female hitchhikers in Missouri. They were watching an episode of Unsolved Mysteries one night and they featured the crime. The description they had of the vehicle and the criminal matched my uncle to a T. They were all living in California at the time, and he was in Missouri at the time in question. He used to go out there once a year for business, like American pickers, to buy old farming stuff for dirt cheap, then sell it in California for a bunch of cash. He stopped going out there about the same year this crime happened. The family members that saw it, myself, stepdad, aunt, and perhaps others, never spoke of it after that night, and no one ever made a call about it. Story 22. My husband inadvertently slept with his half-sister when they were both still teenagers. Due to a lie his father told him, the Hubs did not know she was his sister, but thought they, his half-sis and her mom, were just close family friends. His father knew what was going on between them, no less, and kept his mouth shut just to keep face with his family and avoid drama about having a child out of wedlock. His father told him all this on his passing earlier this year. Hubby is still coming to terms with it. Story 23. A female friend of mine framed a guy for mistreatment. They were both intoxicated, and then, conveniently, when her boyfriend found out they fooled around, it suddenly became mistreatment, and manipulated her boyfriend into harming him. The boyfriend's getting kicked out and still believes the girl. I don't even want to bother trying to tell him because I know it won't work. The school or court dismissed the case, and everyone who knows about what happened knows it's BS, but still there are a lot of people at the school now that just hate this totally innocent guy. He's probably going to have to transfer colleges, which blows because he's a nice dude. Don't even get me started on false allegations. Story 24. Okay, I'll begin this by saying that I've been best friends with the same group of guys for 10 plus years. There are 12 of us, and we're all pretty inseparable. We've all lived with each other at some point as well. In the group, there are 2 guys who have been best friends for at least 18 years. We're all in our early and mid-20s, so that's a pretty freaking long time to be best friends. We'll call them friend A and B. About 3 years ago, friend A knocked up his girlfriend at the time. They had the kid, and it's been great for them. 2 years ago, friend A and B and the girlfriend went to a wedding out of town and stayed in the same hotel. Friend A got intoxicated, passed out, and friend B slept with his girlfriend. Friend B does not acknowledge the bro code. Story 25. So my best friend since her diaper days got a girlfriend. Now she has a reputation as being, pardon my French, a ghetto witch hole. I hated her. She was mean to him all the time, and I think she just dated him despite her friends. They started dating in May, and during the 4th of July, I saw a truck rocking in the casino parking lot just a few minutes before the fireworks display. I walked by because I had a hunch. Sure enough, it was her and this 16-year-old 7th grader from our school doing the dance. She got pregnant, long story short, with his baby. Now, my best friend was really happy in his relationship. Since I've had a huge crush on my best friend since kindergarten, I decided to tell him after wrestling with my inner demons. I couldn't watch her lie to him like that. Well, he just got really mad at me, and he hasn't spoken to me since 8th grade, when this all went down. I really miss him. I don't know, man. He picked a side. You should cut your losses. Story 26. One of my guy friends had a girlfriend of 4 years, but then she broke up with him because he was too clingy and she was graduating soon. We're grad students in uni for a while. He told me he still has pictures of her on his computer. When I expressed my disapproval and explained how it's disrespectful to use that for solo times if you're still not with him, he said he doesn't use it for handy time. He has them for blackmail, just in case she screws with his head. Oddly enough, they're still good friends. And yet he complains about being forever alone. Needless to say, I don't volunteer to fix him up with my single friends anymore. I won't tell anyone a secret, but god damn, that's creepy crap. Story 27. Okay, here goes. Had an ex who, years before we were together, was in the habit of doing online shows, doing stuff for the cam and whatever. One day, one of her viewers revealed himself to be a friend of her parents and then proceeded to blackmail her into doing some really messed up stuff. Oh yeah, and when I was in 6th grade, I was taking part in a school play where I had been cast as a robot. Must not have been much of a thespian. Anyway, one day I showed up early to check out some costume options with the music teacher or director of the play. They both had a few ideas, but his were, well, a little uncomfortable for me. The main one being a shoulder-cut silver leotard, a male. Reluctantly, I took the leotard with the other things to go try on and shut myself in the room where I had been directed to change. Upon entering the room, my spidey sense started tingling. So instead of changing, I started poking around through the conspicuous piles of clothing that had been left atop a wheeled TV stand. To my amusement, and retrospective horror, I found it concealed there in a rolling video camera. Leaning my face down close to the lens, I shook my head, waved a finger back and forth, and never told anyone about that, although I once hinted very broadly, knowing that he knew what I knew, to him and was nearly expelled. Story 28. Okay, so I have a few. My cousin was mistreated by her father from a very young age. Her mom kicked him out after she found out what was happening. However, her brother, who knew what had happened to his sister, goes and meets up with him every so often. Her mom ended up getting with one of my other uncles. I didn't mind him until after my grandma had passed away. He was there when this happened. He stole all of her jewelry, all of her possessions, which would have been worth some money, and did a runner. No one has seen him since, except I saw him once and he smiled, then quickly ran off. I have a messed up family. Now on to the next secrets. One of my friends in school got pregnant around 14 to a guy who was 22. She got a termination. She got pregnant again at 16. Had another termination. Miscarried and now has a baby on the way again. She's only ever told me and her mom. I honestly don't know why she won't just keep her legs closed. Story 29. I know far too much about most of my friends. So much so that just about every single one of them at one time or another got mad at me for telling someone else something I wasn't supposed to. And I don't mean something they told me not to repeat. I'm not a gossip. If you don't tell me not to repeat it and I don't think it's something that shouldn't be repeated, then I don't know why they get mad at me. Anyway, my point is that I've been told so much that most of the time they just expect me not to say anything. Now back on topic. One of my close friends had cancer when she was younger, and her mom has no idea even to this day. Had a cruel husband, more mentally than physically, and some inappropriate things that her husband did to her. Most of the stuff I remember was stuff she has told me. I hang out with her a lot more than most of my other friends at the time. Story 30. My sister is a substance user. A girl I know got mistreated while passed out of college. The guy who mistreated her is now in jail for identity theft. Thank God that piece of crap was a piece of crap even before he mistreated her. My dad cheats on my mom. Most likely, anyway. People can be crappy and stupid and horrible, but you gotta love them anyway. Also, my mom once casually told me she got mistreated by a neighbor when she was a little kid. In her words, I remember I used to love playing with him. I don't remember much, but I remember my brothers beat the crap out of him and everyone else in the family warned me to never go near him again. Looking back, I'm pretty sure he mistreated me. The way she said this was like, whatever, man. I found that more disturbing for whatever reason. Also, this one is actually more messed up than the rest of these depressing tidbits from my life. My grandma used to clean for a bunch of priests. Why a bunch of grown men couldn't do their own damn dishes is anybody's guess. Anyway, she used to bring me along now and then. I remember one was very smiley and touchy-feely and crap. Understandably, this scared the living crap out of me, even when I was 5. Later on, I found out that he got caught in a public bathroom at the beach. Well, they're not beating the allegations. Story 31. My good friend John was really into trying new things during high school. He told me a story about his friend trying something called Nexus and how he was going to take it with him. He freaked out before taking it and went home. His friend never made it home, passing away in the dark, dark basement of some random stranger's house. John was questioned by feds and had hoped it was all over. About 3 years ago, he got a call from some lawyer telling him he was being sued and possibly arrested for the passing of his then close friend. I had never seen someone look so gone inside after hanging up a phone. It was painful to just watch. Story 32. I have a friend. Let's call her Nikki. Used to live with me in the ghetto. Only two white people for literally miles. Nikki was hot, though, which is irrelevant. There was a pit bull who lived next door in the backyard, and it would bark all day and all night. It also just had puppies. Well, Nikki had finals, and Nikki decided that she needed some sleep, so Nikki decided to give the dog a little dose. Well, that sure as crap shut the dog up all night. So Nikki took her finals and went about her life. Later, the neighbor came up and told her about how one of the puppies passed away. Still a secret to this day, and I'm the only person who knows. Story 33. This one time I went to my friend's house to stay over and have a good time. It turns out that my friend fell asleep and I heard his mom tearing up in her room on the second floor all the way in the back. Well, I was on the first floor by the front door playing video games. At first I was just like, she's possibly watching a movie or whatnot. But in reality, she wasn't. I went up there and asked her what had happened. We talked for an hour or so until she gave me signs she wanted to sleep with me. I loved it, and now I know a lot more than the average boy, but I don't consider it mistreatment since I kissed her first. The worst part is that my friend and I went to grammar school and I left to high school. Never in my life I thought I would see them again. But about a year later, I saw him and her at my school freshman orientation. We both know it happened. Yeah, none of us have the guts to tell him we slept with each other. Story 34. A friend told me of how when she was 9 years old, she was mistreated by her pastor when her parents forgot to pick her up from Sunday school. He threatened her and her family if she told anyone. And she had never told anyone until me. She was 16 when she told me. She felt horrible because an even younger girl was also mistreated and found in the church parking lot weeks later, and the police didn't figure out who it was. She recently discovered that she can't have children because of it, and she has been haunted by nightmares and psychological problems relating back to the attack. Somehow, though, she's forgiven him. Story 35. My best friend of many years is still good friends today with a girl she's been close to since kindergarten. When they were kids, her friend's older brother used to mistreat them all the time when the parents left him in charge. Sometimes the friend's grandma would take her granddaughter out to lunch, and my best friend would be left alone with the brother. Once the two girls were out at the park, about 8 years old, and the brother brought a group of his friends to harm his little sister, and though luckily my friend barely escaped that particular incident, she was forced to bear witness to it. My friend didn't remember any of this until she had a severe bout of sickness during her sophomore year of high school, shortly after I met her. Memories are still coming back to her in pieces, even now, years after her first recall. Also, a good friend of mine who I've known for several years wants to start an affair with me. He has a wife and child whom I've also been close with the whole time I've known him. I'm not going to do it, of course, but it bothers me all the time, just knowing he almost kissed me once. Story 36. The details I'm a little fuzzy on, but my dad's father passed away when he was 3. His mom remarried, and apparently, while growing up, his stepdad mistreated him, or at least tried, a couple of times. When my dad was 18, he finally told the family and pressed charges on his stepdad. Turns out his stepdad was doing to a younger cousin, and they came forward as well. They went to court, and my dad's 2 sisters testified against my dad, calling him a liar. The stepdad was found guilty, and my dad vowed to not talk to his sisters and mom ever again. He went to UF for college, and his mom got into his bank account and cleaned him out. My dad had to drop out and move in with my mom's family. Needless to say, I've never met my grandma or aunts from my dad's side, but met pretty much everyone else on his side. He doesn't know I know this, though. My mom told me a couple of years ago. Story 37. I remember my mom and my now-gone aunt used to take a lot of baths with each other when she was alive. I also remember when I was very young, walking into my mom and aunt having intimacy with each other, and my mom telling me after I saw never to tell anyone. I didn't. Fast forward a few years later, my aunt ended herself, and 2 years after that, my mom comes out of the closet and leaves my dad. I don't regret not telling anyone about it, but when I was at a get-together with my 2 other cousins, my aunt is their mom, I mentioned it in passing. They told me they knew all along, and the only people in the family that had no clue are our grandparents. That is a very big family secret. Story 38. My best friend when I was little, they adopted a kid. Some family friend had passed away, and her son was bopping around foster homes, so they adopted him. He was a bit troubled. May have been mistreated a bit, certainly neglected. He was behind a bit in school and would steal things and lie. In that way that trouble kids do, not in a vicious kind of way. When it became clear that he was gay, or worse, they kicked him out of the home, though they say it's because he was out of control. He ran off to the nearby biggish city, was homeless in 17, got in trouble, went to jail, now lives as a woman, and is kind of happy, actually. They act like she, formerly he, never existed. She wasn't invited to her brother's wedding. It's like they took a mulligan in the whole thing and won't own up to what actually happened to the poor kid they swore to protect. Like I said before, some people don't deserve to be parents. Story 39. I don't exactly live in a small town, but a lot of us in the younger peer groups know each other and hang out in really big cliques where we all know each other and anybody connected to that group of people. Well, there's this guy that grew up with all of my friends. He was in the Marines when we first met, and we just talked a lot and had a really smooth friendship. Well, he quit the military recently and we started sleeping together. Nothing serious, just late night half sober calls. It's pretty rough, but the last time we slept together, he was just cruel. I have bruises all over my body and I just feel freaking broken. The whole time I was fighting him, pushing him, telling him no. There's more to it. It was just so cruel. I used to like intimacy a lot, and now when guys hit on me, I just want to hide, which I know will go away after a while. I told one person, but don't want to tell anybody else because everybody I know grew up with him, and I'll either end up alone or tear the group apart. Story 40. My father has had intimacy with multiple girls back in his home country. I know because when I went to visit him, he would point out beautiful girls in their mid-20s and tell me that he's been fooling with them since. Being born and brought up in a rich, developed nation, it blew my mind how socially acceptable it was to do that in this place. On a side note, and in no way am I trying to justify what my dad did or does, I was tutoring English to a 12-year-old and she definitely wanted more than English lessons. I told my dad about it and he just said, "Well, why didn't you go for it? Didn't you think you're the first person she's done it with? Don't be naive." Story 41. My best friend was sold for substance by her bio dad. She was saved by the fam. She's been mistreated 4 times, but she'd only talk about it when we were really hammered. She was abandoned for a year and raised herself for a year in that period. Her stepdad, parents, have been convicted of growing grass, twice in the same house. She has gambling habits and has lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Joe's thousands. She drinks her face off. She's very depressed. I called the cops and stopped her this summer. She tried again a couple of days ago while I was out of town, for family reasons. She's attempted many times in the past. She's been in institutions, halfway-style houses, done therapy, and doesn't believe anything will ever help her. I don't judge her when she does crazy things. She was dating 8 guys at once. But I don't try to stop her, but I'm trying to stay within an ear she can talk to. She's also crazy bright and could be an amazing artist. Story 42. A girl I know was mistreated last year. She didn't tell me any details. I didn't pester her into revealing them. She said she's just now accepting that it was mistreatment, because her oppressor and her mom convinced her it was her fault. She's been dealing with depression and anxiety ever since and has been self-destructive. What she means by that? I don't know. It can mean she has no self-esteem, which is normal for depression, or it can mean she's been doing substances, or it can mean she's been harming. I don't know. The weird thing is, you wouldn't know it by a quick glance at her. She's one of the most intelligent, outspoken, and sweetest people I've ever met. Really. I'm not 100% sure what she told me. We're not super close friends or anything. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.